What's up everyone? My name is Vrinda and welcome to Book Nook Chats. I am super excited to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. This is my first time doing this. I think this is a great way to look back on all the books I've read so far this year, and it's especially more so special because this year was me getting back into reading fiction again after almost a decade, like really getting into the flow of reading fiction. It's crazy how many books I've already read in the past 6 months. I've read about 50 books at this point, and I would never have imagined or expected or guessed that I would get back into reading like this. I feel like this tag is a great way to really think about and reflect on all the books I've read so far and see which are the ones that stand out and what are the different elements that I liked in these books. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The first question is, what's the best book I've read so far in 2024? I cannot pick one, so I have to pick a couple. I've read so many great books this year. The first is The Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom duology. This was amazing. I love Leigh Bardugo's world building. I love her character-driven work, and I love a good heist and con story, and this was just perfect with its plot twists and turns. But more than that, the depth of character study she put into this. Every character felt so unique and individual, and I loved that. Like, you could really understand their motivations, fears, desires, and just the journey that they were on. I loved the structure of the book as well. It was so good. It was so good. This was the only duology of hers that I hadn't read from the Grishaverse. I read everything else about 4 or 5 years ago, and I recently also reread the Shadow and Bones trilogy, and I stand by how I felt the first time. I loved it. I've seen the show as well, and I think the show is brilliant in its own right. I love that they actually merged the Six of Crows and Shadow and Bones storylines, and they did it in such a great way, I must say, like after having read Six of Crows. So it was just woven in quite perfectly, especially the season 1. Season 2, I don't remember. I watched it last year, but like season 1, I've seen twice, so I remember it more clearly. I will be making a separate review on both these at the soon. I do intend to reread the King of Scars duology as well, and I'm going to do a rewatch of the show as well. So I have a whole plan for that. The next book that I absolutely loved is The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book of his that I read, and it's just brilliant. It's so unique and fascinating in its magic system. I love the plot and premise of Shai being this forger who is captured, and now she in captivity has an opportunity to forge a new soul for the emperor, and everything's the setup is it's very close setup. She's just in one room, so it's amazing how much depth we are able to get out of this story, out of her conversations, and it's just so intriguing. I loved almost the philosophical nature of this conversations on like human nature and art, and it was so interesting. I have a separate review up already on The Emperor's Soul, so you can check that out. But this is a story I can't stop thinking about, and I want to reread it. Like, I read it last month. It's not been that long, it's just been a couple of weeks, but I already feel like reading it again. So I love it, and this makes me also excited to read more books by Brandon Sanderson. The next book that I have for my best read so far this year is Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie. This was such a lovely, magical, mystical book. I loved the prose. It was very lyrical. It was also very thoughtful and reflective with some of the themes that it wove in, and I love books like that do that. And this is another book, and also it was based on a Korean retelling, and so it had some Asian influences, which I like because I'm Indian, and so it was really nice. Also, it went into the celestial realm. That's also something that I really like, and it was just so well done, and it's just a standalone, and I love when standalone books or shorter books are able to pack in so much or do such a beautiful job of telling a complete story. I really loved this book, and this is another one that I somewhat can't stop thinking about it. I already feel like reading it again. So that's how good I felt these were. Next up is the best sequel that I've read. So I've read a couple of popular series this year, and these are not like current ongoing series. They're older series because I've been out of the fiction reading realm for 10 years now. And so I read the Cruel Prince series. I didn't think I would like this book because it had a more traditional face setting. Also, when I started reading it, felt a little younger for some reason. But the second book was so good, the twists and turns. And the thing that I enjoyed the most with the Cruel Prince series is that it really captures a lot of that internal conflict of the character, Jude's character. And it also did a great job of really building up the political intrigue elements. This is like a simpler fantasy world, or like a younger fantasy world, but the core of the story is the political intrigue. And so I really love that. The second book really brought the stakes up, and it's great. And I will say that I enjoyed Holly Black's writing in these books, her pace of storytelling, and it was very crisp, very clear, and very purposeful. So I liked the overall, the way she writes. I really enjoyed that. The next best sequel I would say is A Court of Thorns and Roses series. The second book in that, which is Court of Mist and Fury. I did not know how popular these were. I knew nothing about this author, but this is the first kind of fantasy romance book that I picked up. It was also the first romantasy, first fae, first new adult book. I just went into it without any expectations, completely blind. So at the end of this first book, there was an upturn in these stakes and the way the story started going. So Mist and Fury just had a lot happening, which I wasn't expecting, and it was really big and grand, and there were just a lot more to the plot going on. So it was a really fun, entertaining read for sure. I've rated the entire series 4 stars. Initially, when I read it, my rating was much higher, but once I settled down, there were many things that I didn't like. So factoring in those elements, I kind of settled in on a 4-star rating for the series. And then I will say for best sequel, also I will mention Siege and Storm. I think it did such a great job of really being so adventurous, and again the stakes go up, and then the introduction of so many new characters, and you get to see how they work together. Talia, Tamar, and also Nikolai. Oh, Nikolai is so good. So yeah, these are the series that I read whose sequels I think were so much better than their first books. So moving on to books that were my biggest disappointment. There are a couple on here, and okay, I guess disappointment means that I had an expectation of something to begin with. So there are some books that I didn't like, but I'm not going to include it in this. So a few books here. The book that was the biggest disappointment I had is A Court of Thorns and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This was the 4th book, and so while I found the trilogy entertaining, this book, because it didn't really have a plot, what was in focus were the characters and the writing. The writing style is just so exhausting for me at this point because it's so repetitive and hyperbolic, and I just don't. Initially I was amused, but then it just kept building. The amount of references to the word my mate, male, female, it's just excessive, and I couldn't. And then also her characterizations are so extreme, where some are just painted so perfect and saint-like, while others are just so extremely villainized. I don't like that. There's no nuance, and I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like the whole thing is getting worse, and also more smut driven, which I don't enjoy. And so this is a disappointment for me in the sense that I don't trust Sarah J. Maas as an author to be responsible with the characters that she's created and that I actually like. Like, I would like to read Nesta's story, but because I find her character interesting, but I don't feel motivated to read because of the writing style, and also I don't trust that she's going to do a good job with a holistic development of all the characters that come into play. And so yeah, this was a big disappointment. And then a non-fantasy book that I would mention here is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I thought this would be just a very nice light read between some of the bigger series I was reading, but the reality was that this gave me a headache. It just had very annoying. The first character that was introduced was very annoying. Also the structure of the story, the way the events go back and forth, it was a little awkward, and I wonder if it's because it's translated, but I didn't enjoy this book, and if this was in the beginning when I started reading, so I didn't DNF it and I just like pushed my way through it. The end did get a little better, but overall it was like, this is not great. The dialogues were also really weird and just not good. Okay, the next book that was the biggest disappointment I had is Awakens by Elisa Kova. I was looking forward to a good elemental magic series. I didn't even finish this book. I DNF'd it, I think, about 25-30% in. It was just very immature writing, poor world building. I didn't like the characters. The dialogues were very awkward and off, and it put me off from reading anything else by her, though I know she has another series. So I don't know if it would be worth checking out. You could let me know. Tress of the Emerald Sea by Sanderson. This is the first book of his that I picked up and tried to read, but I DNF'd. I thought I would like it because it was a cozy, whimsical fantasy book, and I like that kind of a thing, but I didn't enjoy it quite as much. I think it didn't click with my mood, or just stylistically the narrative voice wasn't for me. And I have a review up on this along with The Emperor's Soul. So yeah, you can check that out if you'd like to know more of my thoughts on this. Going to the next category, which is what was the books that were the biggest surprise for me. I would say there's a middle grade fantasy that I read, Wings of Fire, The Dragonette Prophecy by Tui Sutherland. That's the first book in a series of 9 to 10 books. And this is a dragon fantasy I was looking for a really good dragon fantasy, and I just randomly picked this up at the library, and it was so good. Like, I loved it. All the dragons had so much personality, and this book had political intrigue, and it just had themes of even war, like some more serious themes in there, but the main characters, they were so endearing, and there were just some really great twists and turns, and I loved the storytelling in this book. So this was definitely a big surprise. Like, I would read this middle grade fantasy, I would recommend this, and I would, yeah, it's really good, and I'm happy to know that there are 9 other books in this series, so it's just something I can dig into. Cruel Prince was also a surprise. I didn't expect to like it, but I did. It was really good. Golu Fell Beneath the Sea, I had no expectations going into it. And then non-fantasy, I read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. So I had read a couple of, I don't really read a lot of contemporary romance. I just feel like the stakes are not high enough or like deep enough. But I do like a good contemporary romance every once in a while. But most of the time I'm underwhelmed by the contemporary romance that I read. So this, I was quite surprised. I enjoyed her writing style. Like, it felt like I'm reading a rom-com, like it was just very visual. I liked her phrases. It was really good writing, and I think she did a good job of building tension in this book. So I would want to read other books by Emily Henry. There's some things I didn't like, but overall, I really enjoyed it. So coming to my newest favorite characters, if I have to say, newest favorite character, my most favorite character is Shai from The Emperor's Soul. She is such an intelligent, mature female character, and so badass as well. Okay, I have very rarely read characters like her, female characters like her, who are also so intelligent and mature. Like, usually there are badass teenage characters in most fantasy books, but just there was a different depth to her experience of her knowing who she is, and the extent to her skill set, which has been honed over years, and also getting to know her and who she is without the context of a relationship. I think those are some key things that I really enjoyed seeing, and I loved Shai's character. Honestly, so good. She's so good. I wish there were more books with her in it. I wish this Emperor's Soul was a series. I wouldn't just mind reading like the different adventures that she goes on at different points in time. Like, I would just love to read more with her as the character in there. A lot of characters from Six of Crows would feature on this list. Specifically, I would say Matthias. Surprisingly, actually, I didn't expect to like him as much as I did, but his whole character journey and character arc was really good because it takes a lot to change your internal prejudices, and that's something that he really worked on and did. And also, he was such an intense character in the beginning, and just his entire evolution, I really enjoyed it. I didn't expect to, but I really did. And his internal dialogue was often really funny as well, like when the way he saw the entire group. It was actually really fun. And I loved Kaz and Inej from Six of Crows. And then from Shadow and Bones, I would say I really love Nikolai's character. He is so charming and engaging, and he just jumps off the page. Like, he's such a good character. Like, his dialogues, his dynamics with Alina, or like with anybody, like just the kind of personality and kind of charisma and aura that he has, I loved it. So yeah, these would be my newest favorite characters. Going into best couples, I would say I really enjoyed, I read Divine Rivals, and I really liked Iris, Winnow, and Roman Kid. I think they had such a sweet love story, and the way they kind of opened up to each other and learned to be vulnerable. I think it was just such a beautiful story, and I just loved those two characters and how they got together, and just their entire like relationship journey. I feel like it was the most real and grounded, but in a fantasy world, and I just enjoyed it so much. Kaz and Inej also, I would say, as a couple, like just what it took for them to start to be vulnerable with each other, and it's such a slow burn between them, but the way it starts showing through, this is obviously a much more complicated relationship, but I think I enjoyed this because you get to know about these characters very independent of each other, like who they are, and then also together. So this was really nice as well. Books that made me cry. So this year I started by rereading Harry Potter. So this is the only place I'm going to use that, because that is one book, and I read it after a couple of years, I think 2-3 years. So it had been a while. That's my all-time favorite fantasy adventure series. And the fifth and seventh books, I mean, just big moments, even sixth book, but specifically fifth and seventh, I love those books so much, and there's so many moments that get me so emotional and teary. And the one which I can point to without fail that always makes me shed tears and cry is this scene with Dobby. I mean, it's so good. So this is the one place I'm going to use that series. Apart from this, there are a lot of books that I was reading that did have moments that got me teary, but I can't remember all of them, honestly. One was the Suriel scene with in the maybe Wings and Ruin. That kind of got me. And then Siege and Storm, there were moments definitely that got me teary, even Ruin and Rising. And then the Crooked Kingdom ending. Yeah, I think it depends, like which are the books that I felt really invested in at the time that I was reading, to the point that it would make me, emotional. The end of Emperor's Soul did make me emotional. There were like some really strong, impactful moments there, but I don't think I actually cried in most of these. Like it got me feeling a lot, but like I don't think I cried. The next prompt is book that made me happy. So there are a couple of books that they had such a happy vibe the entire time I was reading it, and I think for me this is like the low stakes fantasy books. Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I had the best time reading this. It was so good. I liked the sense of humor. It was just so magical, and it was just a very happy feeling. So I enjoyed this book. I gave this a 4 stars. There were some things in the ending which was a little cheesy and a little problematic, but apart from that, I really enjoyed this. And then Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This was such a cozy, warm hug of a book, and I loved it. Like, I read it between 2 series, and they're just like the perfect palate cleansers, but it just made me so happy. Like, the descriptions of coffee and the pastries and people discovering it for the first time. It was just such a good story. And another one like this is The Fellowship of Bakers and Magic by Jay Penner. This one I just found, and this is like follows this a human girl who is, it's a fantasy world, high fantasy world, so there are magical beings of all kinds, and then there's this baking competition that she's participating in, and there's this it was so magical and sweet, and again the descriptions of the food and pastries was so good. But I just loved the world of this, and yeah, I just had like a very happy vibe throughout this reading of this book. Okay, I was editing my video and I realized I completely skipped over this one question. Who are my favorite new authors? And I have to mention 5. First up is Sanderson. I have read only one book of his, but I'm super excited to get to reading his Mistborn trilogy and also the Stormlight Archives and really get into the Cosmere universe. The second author I must mention is Grace Traven. I read her Radiance series, rather Wraith King series, and it was really great. I love her relationship building and the way she writes romance in her books, and the quality of writing and the maturity of it is something that is really appealing to me. So there are many other books of hers that are on my TBR and that I would really love to read. Next up is Rebecca Ross. I loved Divine Rivals. Just again, the quality of her writing. It's so lyrical, so simple, and I kind of like the magic she weaves in. It's somehow simpler, at least in this book. So I'm curious to see what her other books are like, and I have a couple of other titles of hers that I would be interested to read. And then I'll mention Trisha Levenseller. I've only read Daughter of the Pirate King so far by her, but it was so fun. It had some great banter, just very well written, good pace, not too long. And I really loved that, you know. So she's an author that I would kind of keep an eye out on. And I think she has a couple of other series as well. So I would be interested to read those. And then I want to mention Margaret Rogerson. I read An Enchantment of Ravens by her. I really enjoyed her writing style, the sense of humor she wove in, and also her romance. It was very sweet and it had really good world building. I have another book of hers on my TBR, which is The Sorcery of Thorns, and I'm looking forward to reading those. Next up is I'm going to skip books that I need to read by the end of the year. What I'm going to put in this category are all the books that I have on my Art Fantasy Bingo Board Challenge. I have a whole book laying out my TBR for that. So if I have to be specific, it would be mostly all the books on that bingo challenge. Apart from that, I'm not really having any specific books. I'm open to just exploring and reading new books. And then coming to the most beautiful book that I've bought so far, I'm not buying a lot of books. Mostly I'm borrowing books from the library or I read them as ebooks. But the one book that I did buy is Divine Rivals, and this, I just loved the cover. It was so beautiful. And then Six of Crows, I did get to read it in its hardbound collector's edition, so that was really wonderful. And then The Daughter of the Moon Goddess and Heart of the Sun Warrior, I read them in the library but as physical copies, so I would definitely say they have two of the most beautiful covers that I've come across. So yes, that's it for the mid-year freakout tag from my end. I would love to hear your picks on some of these categories. Let me know what are your best reads so far this year. And I'll see you all again in my next video. Bye!